1994. This is a picture of my son, Josiah Nathan Niall. He was born August 1st, 1994, and he passed away on Easter, April, I think it was the 4th that year in 1996, at 20 months old. He passed away on an operating table in Helsinki, Finland. He had been living in Omsk, Siberia, just to the right of Chernobyl, just under Tomsk, Siberia, for a good 6 to 8 months or something. I had given him up for adoption to my aunt and uncle that were missionaries to many places over in the Asia area, for the most part. Yeah. So I got pregnant with him basically a few months after I went down to that missionary trip to Nicaragua. So it would have been very, very acute with infection of the fungal pathogens that were 85% prevalent in the waters there related to red tide. Strongyloids and coccidioids, or I don't know how to pronounce that correctly, something like that, are the main ones. There was also leishmaniasis, guinea worm, which is draculinus, something like that, and other diseases. Nicaragua was a very, very diseased place in the 90s. It still is, but it was extremely diseased there, and it got a bit of a cleanup when they took control of Nicaragua and used they were using a lot of Agrobacterium ti at the time, which is basically a bacterium that is put into the roots of sea plants to cause tumors to grow in the roots so that more foliage and leaves will grow on the sea plant underwater and therefore counteract pollution. Nicaraguan ocean was basically a garbage dump, and from an aerial view it was pure red. So they tried to protect us on this trip. We probably shouldn't have been there in the first place. There was extreme civil war going on for one, and it was really unsafe. But we weren't allowed to go swim in the ocean or get in the ocean at all. We did, however, go swim in a volcanic lake, just so that we would have that, be able to have that experience, like going all the way there. And I think still, according to like just having to eat food and drink water, it was, even though we drank like orange, like Fanta soda or whatever, it was still pretty unavoidable that we would indeed come into contact with some of those pathogens. And those weren't really what you got shots for. I mean, they gave us shots for like malaria and I don't know, some stuff they knew a little more about at the time. Anyways, fast forward, I got pregnant with him a few months after that trip, and since I gave him up for adoption, he wasn't breastfed by me. It was a formula-fed baby, which probably didn't help, because had I breastfed him, he would have no doubtedly developed some more antibodies to some of these parasitic infections. But he actually was doing pretty well. They saw a white spot on his heart when I was getting ultrasounds with him. And unfortunately, a very experienced doctor that actually even went on trips to Africa himself failed to detect it for what it was, which was basically a manifestation of rat lungworm. And how I know this for sure is that he had a little sister born that started out normal and healthy, but when she was about 6 to 8 months old, she developed neurological issues, and one side of her body wasn't keeping up, and she ended up living to be 6 to 8 years old, somewhere in that range. But she looked exactly like a kid that ate a snail in Hawaii that went into a coma. And
Australia, I think. Maybe.
His name was like Sam Smith or something like that. If you look up the story about strongoloids, and then you will like see his story, and they're a little bit different per region. But he ate a snail on a dare on that, like come up on the patio, and ended up going to a coma and being pretty much in a vegetableized type state after that. I think
Australia.
So maybe. His little sister, my niece, looked exactly like that kid did. So the white spot was seen on the heart by somebody that had enough experience to where they should have detected it. I guess with us being north and far away from a lot of those issues, that doctor failed to, or perhaps just the cover-up of liability concerning this stuff. They refuse to acknowledge it because they're not allowed to by the big guys, the big giants that run the earth and do stuff that isn't very good for people in the name of greed and profit. It's another big reason they have to use Agrobacterium TI in the waters in the ocean is because instead of us growing things locally and having more local community-based commerce, they have to ship everything from here to there to there to here to there so that like basically the 1% can get rich, and they are thereby using a lot of barge traffic to transport that stuff, and that was a big part of why Nicaragua was under civil war. It was the reason, because the locals were not okay with the country being taken over and split halfway through so that the barges could go through. And if you look at a map of Central and South America, you could understand completely why it was such a big deal for commerce to get control of that area and cut through that country, because going around South America is a really big deal. So it was quite the shortcut. So when Josiah was down in Tulsa, and I went down to Tulsa to go to school partially because, and I gave him up for adoption to somebody in my family because I wasn't ready to have a child, and I knew I couldn't provide him with a family, and my aunt and uncle couldn't have children at the time. They had adopted a girl from Nepal and a boy from Korea. And so I gave Josiah up to them for adoption, knowing that I would get to be in his life and see him again. So I went down to Tulsa, Oklahoma to go to school there because his parents were in their second year of Rhema, which was a foreign missionary related degree, which I would later go on to complete that degree. However, since I have been chronically ill since that trip to Nicaragua, it's pretty much squashed that career move. Not only that, I failed to get any support from the church organization despite my attempts. It was more important for rumors, I guess, and lies to be spread about me. And I think my dad has some narcissistic jealousy and was jealous of my spiritual gifts also. And so it became a bit of a power struggle. So it's been sabotage, and that degree basically was mostly useful with the Rhema organization, and an umbrella organization under Rhema organization is called AFCM, Association of Faith Churches and Ministries. The graduate of that organization being part of the charter class of Rhema. I feel that these organizations have changed quite a bit since the 80s and 90s, and mostly a lot of times when things go into the hands of the child, the vision changes, and oftentimes they become rich and they sell out to money, and that's my opinion, but I think a lot of people would agree with me on it. So when Josiah was in Tulsa and they were getting ready to move to Siberia, Russia, they went and had all their physicals and checkups. He would have been about a year old when he went and had the checkup. The white spot on his heart had not progressed at that point, and they got all the shots they needed. He was cleared to be healthy enough to move to Russia. I stayed at the time. I was a graphic design student at Oral Roberts University. I stayed there and I did college, and it was after Josiah passed that things were very upsetting and traumatic, and at that point, that was, my dad highly encouraged me to go to Rhema, said he would pay for it, and I felt like I really needed something to heal the whole situation. And so I went to Rhema, and as an alumni child, when they moved to Siberia, Russia, they, like I said, were in Omsk, which was under Tomsk a year after a radioactive spill. And if you look at those areas, their rivers are bright red. I had a bug book that basically showed a lot of different bugs, and a certain class of bugs, especially those that are in the water, such as mud daubers and things, they are highly reactive to radiation. And at the time when this book was written, in like the 60s, 50s, 60s, there was like hundreds of these varieties of bugs. No doubtedly, how they like evolved, mutated, cross-mixed, interbred, whatever you'd want to call it, evolved, created more species. And our radiation, as everybody knows, since the 90s has also increased 10 times. So when they went to Russia, his condition started to immediately degrade, and in a very fast-paced way. That spring, or I'm sorry, it would have been winter, he started to show health problems, and they finally brought him to the hospital because he was pretty much on his deathbed, and in Russia, their hospitals are pretty much behind quite a bit. And they thought he had meningitis, so there you go. The meninges, encephalitis, affects your central nervous system, on and on. But the answer was to fly him to Helsinki, Finland, for him to get heart surgery, because they knew he had this spot on his heart. They believed that this is what the problems were coming from. That missionary organization was willing to work with all the churches in the organization to create the funds to send Josiah to Helsinki, Finland, and air flight him there and pay for everything. The same organization that has failed me, probably a lot of it has to do with my dad's gossip concerning me, mostly untrue. I can't say I've been perfect, but what my dad's done is exaggerated what I've been involved in a few weeks of my life and turned it into my whole entire lifetime and continued to lie about me. It doesn't help when you have a skin condition. My dad himself was deeply involved in drug use for a good decade or more. And I should have been taken away from them as a child, honestly. Had, the government stepped in, I would have been. If they visited that hippie cabin, they definitely would have taken me away from them. And this is the same person that has judged me and basically had a huge smear campaign going against me and is responsible for me almost being killed on a welfare check and defamed since. He is the start of it. He is the beginning of it. So, anyways, when they got him to Helsinki, they fasted him for a day to perform the surgery. Unfortunately, when they opened him up to do what they thought was heart surgery, the pathogens, the microbes, they had spread and grown immensely into every single organ in his body, and particularly into his brain, all throughout his nervous system and into his brain. And this is the disease and what I've been dealing with that they have refused to treat. The infectious disease doctor refused to even see me concerning what is now 6 years of shingles on the top of my head. It looks just like an infectious disease lab from at a freshman level at just about any school. I think I observed Yale's freshman infectious disease level or entry level labs posted on YouTube to see that. What's going on the top of my head is exactly, they've got like decades of documentation that directly relates to all of these symptoms that I've been reporting to them for over 20 years, but they refuse to do labs. They refuse to help me. I've had insurance pretty much the whole time, yet they've just flat out refused to help me, and it's called medical neglect. And not only that, they've gone above and beyond and put lies down in my charts about me that are completely untrue, falsely flagged me on and on, partially for having a skin disease, and that's called medical defamation. Anyways, it was the exact manifestation of rat lungworm, which comes from the pathogens in the strongyloid family, STRONYGY, strongy, LOIDS, strongyloids. This was confirmed, and I found out of those class of pathogens because the same manifestations and symptoms I have what's been proven under the microscope to be a Lyme disease co-infection, was studied in Tulsa, Oklahoma, solidly proven to be connected to Lyme disease. And usually Lyme disease begins to affect you when you have other infections your bodies can't fight off, such as the pathogens I was exposed to in Nicaragua. And so when I started making videos, when I was at my most desperate point, fighting for my life and my family, who has a lot, they have a lot of properties, and they have benefited from the business that I spent day and night working 60 plus hours a week of my only healthy adult years, put in a lot of extra volunteer time into not paying myself the first 2 years, paying myself about $3 an hour for the next couple years, poured my heart and soul into it, and had to give it up because I became so sick and these doctors refused to help me. So my family, all of them benefit from that business except for me. I guess in a way I do slightly because my grandson receives care there, and that's about it. They also were part of the smear campaign and defamation, and it's really underhanded when it comes to narcissistic abuse. All you gotta do is go in the office and just see their smirks at each other, knowing that all they do is gossip and talk smack about you when you're not there. Is extreme injustice what's happened. And had these doctors just done their jobs initially, it probably would have prevented a lot of it. But like I said, when I first posted a video concerning my symptoms and what my disease is called, when I had a doctor that was treating me properly and helping me a lot, but was forced by special interests to no longer help me, she gave me the diagnosis of what I have, and she learned that from a specialist, what that was called. She printed me out the Mayo Clinic printout, which straight up states that it's a Lyme disease co-infection. But yeah, the video was from somebody in Hawaii. There's a lot of this in Hawaii. And a researcher had connected the symptoms to Lyme, as well as strongyloids.
And Bartonella plays a big part.
There's more. There's more concerning my beginnings and other shots and things I've had, but it's not anything I like to talk about. It's controversial, and I believe they had better intents when they started doing this stuff. The thing is they failed to follow through and fix their issues with it. But I didn't want to get into those. I just simply wanted the Lyme and the mold treated, because when I was putting videos up, that's how the people would say they got better from it, was by getting Lyme and mold treated. And I had that set up. But unfortunately, due to the fact they almost killed me on a welfare check call, which was unwarranted, I wasn't going to hurt anyone. I wasn't going to hurt myself. I simply needed my family's help to get better because I was too sick to sit up in a chair. I was having to stay with family members, and I was literally going into death. I would have to leave their house, deep breathe. I would see a white light. I would see things go white. I would see things go dark. I would have to deep breathe and hold on to life. Mold can literally kill you. It can be fatal. Yet these doctors still refuse to do their job. And it's more important for them to cover up liability and throw people's lives away than to do their job. So yeah, I'm not acting. I'm sorry I'm not giving some weirdo attention on my page that I've already blocked half a dozen times. My story is real. Very few people on this planet go through as much injustice as I've been put through. And all I've had is good intentions. All I did was use my healthy years to put really good stuff into this community. And all I've ever been paid back is nothing but defamation, harassment, bullying, utter disregard for my life.
Gang stalking and hacking now.
And that's why my story has to be known, because this junk needs to stop. And it needs to start with doctors doing their jobs. And stop lying about sick patients and giving them the labs and the treatment they need. And then it needs to stop with families narcissistically abusing their families. It needs to start with treating people like they're human beings and like their lives matter. Because some of us are highly skilled and highly talented. And we've been given these skills and these talents because we were put on this earth to create a better tomorrow. And our lives have just been thrown away. I have had 2 decades of my life be thrown away. Mostly due to medical neglect. And it is costing taxpayers so much to just leave us sick and not treat our conditions and lie about us. It's awful. This stuff is only being passed in our womb to the next generations and the generations after that. And it is about time that something is done about it. But if they refuse to listen to patients and what's actually going on with them, and they're just willing to spin lies to cover up liability, how are any of these problems going to get better? They're not. They're only going to get worse. So I have the best of intentions. And I'm not what my dad is, like, defamed me and gossiped about, and the rest of my family gossiped about that I am not that.
And I never got my inheritance, so there's
Everybody
more to that
goes through their learning experiences and makes their mistakes, but nobody should have to be held to stuff they did 15 years ago for a few weeks. Are you kidding me? Yet nobody's willing to step up, do the right thing, apologize, help save their own family member's life. I am not acting. And anybody that says that, I'm trying to block that person for that reason, YouTube. And I've tried to block him half a dozen times. Yet the creep is still able to somehow post on my censored page, where all my videos are prevented from being seen except for by a couple people, one being a creep that is harassing me. This stuff all needs fixed, and that's all there is to it.
I had another thought back there. I don't know. If I remember it, I'll put it in the comments. But, the fact of the matter is that actual professionals in the field of mental health, when they know all I've been through and all that I have been put through, I'm actually considered very mentally strong and very mentally sane concerning what I've been through. And a lot of people wouldn't even be able to tolerate a portion of it, or they would be not doing as well, and they would have far more like mental issues. The thing is it starts out with physically based illness, but when it is neglected, when you're treated like your life doesn't matter, and then when you have further stuff go against you to cover up people's liabilities, yeah, it is distressing. It is traumatic. So it creates, mental imbalances, but it's not the mental illness. It's the physical illness not being treated in the way that you are being treated as a person. I can guarantee you, if I had been given some recompense and some financial ability to get back on track concerning my businesses, and this thing on the top of my head was treated, my physical pathological, I guess, which means physically based, microbial colonizations, if this stuff was treated and I was actually like brought into better health and had just some minimal housing security, I get sabotaged 3 months into every job now. It's unreal. I get pushed out of jobs because of intimidated managers, because I work really hard and I've got a lot of experience. And for the last 5 months, somehow with my hack devices, I've actually not been able to even get a job, even though I've applied every week for 1 or more jobs. And I used to be able to get any job I applied for. If I did happen to have an interview and not get the job on the spot when I'd bring a resume in, I'd wear a suit dress into that interview and I would get that job right away. So there's stuff that's really not right. It's very, very funky. And also now I've got weird stuff with my mail being forwarded without my consent, not getting my inheritance. Somehow it supposedly went to Jimmy Carter, which I don't believe is the case at all. You know, family members, they seem to think that they're just better than you and that they're just more important than you. And even though they have so much, they deserve, to have more when you are barely fighting for your life and the security just to use your gifts and skills and talents. It is extremely out of balance and it needs fixed. And that is the only reason that I want my story to be told, is to save lives and to prevent further torture like this, and also to take the tax load off of taxpayers, because chronically ill people will actually get criticized and harassed and bullied by taxpayers that are just saying, well, just go do your job, when the thing is you can deal with a lot of pain, but when it comes to chronic fatigue syndrome, that is such a barrier, and it is such a blockage. People in normal health can go work a job and then do their business afterwards to build business and put in sweat equity if they're not lazy, which a lot of people are just too lazy and too unwilling to actually just even invest their own money into something to grow their own business. But then there's those of us that will sacrifice everything. As a single mom, I worked hard and I put anything extra after my daughter's needs were met into materials to grow my own business with chronic illness. And as people like us that aren't supported, that is entirely out of balance, and it needs fixed. And I feel like my story being told will help to open up some eyes and will help to wake some people up. Not only that, I can tell, teach kids that you put money into your skills and talents, and that's the way you start your business, from nothing, from scratch, and start to obtain your freedom and work for yourself. My message is really, really important. So for me to get nothing but censoring, blocking, harassment, gang stalking, hacking, and have my life haunted, that's everything that's wrong with the world today. Don't tell me it's not. And why is it that those of us that are unlazy, we've got the smarts to do it, we're willing to invest the time and the money into it, but we just get further targeting for that? There are no answers in this sort of, strategy. It needs fixed.